Right now, silver is incredibly undervalued compared to gold. And this is going to have some huge reversion in the future.
Goldsilver.com. Price match guarantee. Free shipping. Global storage options. Phenomenal customer service. Get the best-selling book, Guide to Investing in Gold and Silver, for free at goldsilver.com.
We talked about gold and silver just now. I discovered how undervalued silver was compared to gold back in April of 2003 and started buying a lot of silver at $4.30. And here, the next chart on page 39, you've got the gold-silver ratio inverted, which is actually the silver-gold ratio. Mm-hmm. I never express it as the silver-gold ratio because then you end up with these numbers that are fractions, and it's harder for people to understand. It's easier to have whole numbers of, we've got numbers ranging from 30 to 90 than 0 point something or other. So you've got the S&P 500, and then you've taken the silver-gold ratio and plotted over the top of it. And tremendous correlation from 1990 until 2011, when silver ran up and did a peak, and it hit $48 in April of 2011. And the gold-silver ratio, which is the whole numbers, you can see that it was in the 70s on this chart back in 2008, and it fell all the way to 30. And that's the point where it became out of sync. And it's like an absolute reverse correlation to the stock markets today. And I don't understand what would have caused this except QE and possible faith in the Fed. But right now, silver is incredibly undervalued compared to gold, being in the 80s, and it was up in the 90s for several weeks there, where it's 1/90th. Silver's value is 1/90th of gold's value. In other words, it takes 90 ounces of silver to buy 1 ounce of gold, which is insane. For a couple thousand years, the average is around 13 to 1, 15, 12 to 1, and then 15 to 1 when we developed central banking and had pegs and stuff for the past 300 years. And then it's been as out of whack as 100 to 1 in just the past century and a quarter or century and a half. And this is going to have some huge reversion in the future. But what do you think the reason is for it being so highly correlated until 2011 and so uncorrelated today? It's almost a reverse correlation.
Well, our idea is that, in previous economic cycles, reflation was achieved by expanding credit. And then at some point, 2012, 2013, it might have broken down. So actually, the Federal Reserve and other central banks, they tried to achieve the reflation by buying securities, which only led to asset price inflation, but no price inflation yet. And I think that, rising price inflation is probably one of the most contrarian standpoints or calls that you can make at the moment. And actually, there was this Bloomberg Business Week cover saying the death of inflation, that the inflation monster is dead. And normally that's a very good and reliable contrarian indicator. So from my point of view, based on Murray Rothbard, basically, he said, first, there's monetary inflation, then there is asset price inflation, and the third stage only is price inflation. And I think we have seen the first two stages already, and now price inflation might be on the horizon.
Well, here's one of the ways that works. I've done a lot of studying on this. One of the things that I noticed when I looked at how base currency was growing back in 2009 and 10, and I think I first may have presented the chart with this correlation in 2012 or 13, but you can index the stock market, the S&P 500 here for the audience. If you look, there's two humps. The year 2000 was a peak, the year 2007 was a peak, and there's a dip. And then at that dip, that's when Ben Bernanke did quantitative easing. And I can plot the growth of the currency supply, base currency, on top of the stock market. And from December of 2008 until December of 2015, they're almost exactly on top of each other. And the reason that you have asset price inflation first is because in order to create a dollar, the Federal Reserve has to print that dollar, and then they have to buy something to get it into the economy. And they're very limited as far as the scope of what they can legally buy. Historically, it's usually been US Treasury debt. So they're buying our national debt with currency that they counterfeited, and then we have to pay taxes in the future to pay it back. But the people that have that debt, that have US Treasury bonds in stock, ready to be sold, are the big brokerage houses. They're the primary dealers that are allowed to show up at the Treasury auction. I believe there's 28 of them. But it's the largest banks and brokerage houses on the planet that are the bidders at the Treasury auction. And they print, so the Fed prints these dollars, buys them from that broker dealer, the big brokerage houses, but it lifts the stock market so much that the correlation from December of 2008 to December of 2015 is 0.976. It's 97.6% of the time when base currency goes up, the stock market goes up by the same exact percentage. That's proof that these things have to be linked. So the asset price inflation does come first because it's a direct consequence of the currency creation. Another thing that this does, it creates this wealth disparity that is causing all the resentment in society and causing a breakdown of our society in the West here, where you've got this sort of infighting between the middle class and the poor, accusing the rich of like stealing all the wealth. Well, it's the Federal Reserve that's stealing it. They create currency, they buy an asset, the stock market goes up by that same percentage. The currency that they created diluted the currency supply. So it stole purchasing power from the middle class, and it bestows it upon the rich by directly lifting the stock market. And if Jeff Bezos owns 16% of Amazon, he goes from having $30 billion to having $130 billion directly because of this mechanism. He shouldn't be worth $130 billion. He deserves the reward for creating the biggest shopping center in the world, Amazon.com. He deserves the reward for, sir, I buy a lot on Amazon. I mean, my Amazon bill is probably $4,000 a month. But he doesn't deserve all the excess currency that this rise from 2008 to 2015 in the stock market. That is a direct correlation with base currency, and it created the world's first centabillionaires, where Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates are now worth more than $100 billion. And it was a reverse Robin Hood effect, where the Federal Reserve was stealing from the middle class and the poor and bestowing that wealth upon the rich. It is their wealth that was transferred, and it causes this resentment and the disintegration. There's no more harmony in our society here. It's the middle class and the poor against the rich at this point, and it's causing the whole political system to have all of this infighting. It's really horrible to see what's going on, and people don't recognize that it is not the fault of the wealthy. It's the fault of the world's central banks.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, do you remember the Occupy Wall Street movement a couple of years ago? I think it was 9 or 10 years ago. You know, now the next recession, the next crisis, by definition, will happen with income and especially wealth disparities at their highest level ever. So from my point of view, the unrest will probably be a bit more forceful than the very well-behaved and peaceful Occupy Wall Street movement 10 years ago. And this is definitely something that concerns me. And therefore, it's also important to show that the root cause for most of the problems that we are discussing nowadays, only on the surface, the root cause is in our monetary system.
Yes, absolutely. You know, one of the things I want to close out this section But one of the things that I want to let people know is that, there's this myth that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and nothing could be further from the truth. That is absolutely wrong. Everybody is getting richer. The problem is that the richest people are getting richer the fastest at a blazing rate, because small amounts of wealth are being stolen from billions of people. It's being transferred from the middle class and the poor to the wealthy. But if you look, I've just been reading the Credit Suisse Wealth Report that just came out a few days ago, and I keep up on this. And other than people that are trapped, like in the United States, we've got something called the welfare trap, where they get on all of these different government programs, and they find that if they go out on a job interview, that if they take the job, they're actually going to lose. They're getting paid more to sit on the couch and watch TV and go out on a job interview once in a while, but never actually take a job, because if they do, they're going to be a lot worse off economically. So there's the welfare trap. Those people aren't really going anywhere. But everybody else, their income is rising. The number of hours that they have to work to accumulate the same amount of stuff is going down. So the value of their labor is actually rising, and people don't realize this. And this is all provable stuff. You can go to the Federal Reserve and download the data. You can go to the IMF and download the data. It's true. Across the world, pretty much everybody is getting wealthier. It's just that there's a greater and greater wealth disparity because of the economic system, the way the monetary system works. So with that, I've got to wrap this up. And I want to thank you so much for being here, Ronni. It's been a real pleasure. And so this section is over with. So anything you want to say, Ronni, at the end of this one?
No, it's okay. Quite a pleasure talking to you and discussing our charts. It is really a big treat for me. So thank you very much.
So I want to thank everybody for watching. Please go down into the video description. Click on Ronnie's link to Incrementum and to the In Gold We Trust report. At least download this executive summary, the chart book. Also, subscribe to our channel. Click that little notification bell so that you get the next update in this series. And I want to thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.
goldsilver.com. Price match guarantee. Free shipping. Global storage options. Phenomenal customer service. Get the best-selling book, Guide to Investing in Gold and Silver, for free at goldsilver.com.